Hello, test, test. Can you hear me? That's perfect. Oh, I think we are set to go.
L'interview sera en français, vous pouvez poser des questions en français. John a la traduction simultanée. Et vous, de votre côté, avec les casques, vous aurez la traduction aussi simultanée. D'accord? On a un micro qui va se balader dans la salle. Ce qui est important, c'est que vous leviez la main et vous demandez le micro. Pas de questions sans micro. Le problème, c'est que si vous posez des questions dans le micro, on ne vous entendra pas en bas, John ne vous entendra pas. Et surtout, le traducteur ne vous entendra pas. Ok? Merci tout le monde.
Testing. Bonjour. Hello. Everybody can hear me okay? And I won't hear the French translation, right? I just hear you.
No, don't worry. You won't hear the translation towards French.
Okay. Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I apologize for the short notice of the press conference, but I appreciate your coming out. Obviously, we've had a great deal of news surrounding the club and the change in role of Jean-Michel. So that's certainly a topic I know you'll want to talk about. And generally, in the last few months, since I've been involved, certainly we've learned a great deal about the club and have some thoughts on the future direction of the club as a football club and as an organization. So I guess I'll just sort of open up with that. I'm getting a lot of noise off my rain jacket, so I think I'm going to take this off. Excuse me. Anyway, I don't have any prepared remarks. This is really just intended for Q&A. I guess I'd like to open up by thanking Jean-Michel for inviting me into this club. As you'll recall, there was a process that was started a couple of years ago where the selling majority combination of shareholders of IDG and Pathé had initiated a process to exit their investment and transition their shares into new ownership. There were a variety of parties that were invited, rumored, actual, and rumored sort of participants in the process. I was very happy, very honored to be selected by the sellers and also by Jean-Michel. This wasn't just a transaction that involved IDG and Pathé, but Jean-Michel, of course, entered into agreements with us where a large portion of his shares also transitioned into Eagle football ownership. We have an extremely collaborative model at Eagle. We generally reject kind of the label multi-club. Of course, it's the most accurate way to describe what we are, but theoretically, spiritually, we don't look to operate the way the others do. We're a family of clubs, each the most important club, often the most important element of somebody's life within their communities, whether it's Belgium or the United Kingdom or Brazil, those clubs are as important to the people of those communities as OL is to this community, to Lyon. And so it's in that sort of theme of high collaboration that we see significant advantages in working with other countries and other clubs with a global footprint of talent identification. There are some limits, of course, to how much of that quality internationally affects the roster of Lyon. There are only 4 roster positions available for non-European players. But certainly that global footprint of talent identification can make sure that the players that fill those positions are the very best available to contribute to this team. At the same time, this family of clubs, we hope they're continuing to do well. Of course, I'm very nervous about Brazil. We just started that season. Very hopeful about what's happening in Belgium. If we have a good result next week, that team becomes an even better partner with OL, because it's not only about having great reach into other countries to identify players, it's about having great partners to provide playing opportunities to those developing in our academy. There's a great gap between the first team and the second team because of the division our second team in Lyon is required to play. So obviously, those that know football, love football, understand how terrific it is to have a collaborative family of clubs that care about each other to create development opportunities for Lyon Academy kids beyond, necessarily our second team or other options we have in the academy. So the beginning of this collaboration has really been terrific for some of our other clubs. A small amount of collaboration, starting to occur here at OL. It's not really what we're here to talk about necessarily, but I did want to thank Jean-Michel for inviting me into this family and being open-minded to the ideas that we have for the future of this club. And we'll talk a lot about the future of this club today. I guess the one thing I'd like to say about what's being reported in the press, and I do see some very high-quality reporting, articles being written. I think many journalists in this room put a lot of energy into an article and are often surprised at what the headline might say, because the headline doesn't necessarily properly characterize the article itself. So I've seen a lot of clickbait. I think it's, I think it's hurtful to real people, and I think it's harmful to the actual story. I wish that the wonderful journalists that wrote articles could also write the headlines, but I know it doesn't really work that way in these organizations. And the point I think I'm trying to make is, different viewpoints, ideas about the future, ideas about football. I mean, football is one of those, it's something that everybody seems to have strong opinions about, and that's what makes it wonderful. I think when you talk about differences and directions and different ideas and what to do with the football department, additional scouting resources, getting ready for next year, there, disagreements, different directions, ideas, very healthy. And Jean-Michel and I have always had a very good relationship. We've communicated well together. And I do want to say, just as we make this transition, let's try not to overstate, tensions that are just very normal in human nature. And he very wonderfully and respectfully thought it was an appropriate time for us to be able to make some of these decisions going into the future, because collaboration and the resources that we have around the world, not just capital, but relationships, players, clubs, communities, these are going to be very important to OL going forward. And so I think it's an appropriate time to make this transition. I'd also like to thank him on behalf of your community for, everything about this place. This club, this stadium, these teams. I just had a great chance to talk with Sonia on the women's side about her thoughts and her needs and, you know, what they really want to see happen, which is continued excellence and our commitment to that. I'll have dinner tonight with Laurent Blanc. I like saying his name in first name and last name because he's such a legend. So I'm looking forward to that dinner. Yeah, it's time to talk about the future. I was thanking Jean-Michel just as I sort of began this thought, and I want to continue that. It's a truly remarkable organization he's built, and on both sides, men and women, beyond football, you know, entertainment, technology. It's a massive club, not only here, but in communities around the world, with reach that goes into other countries, the US, Brazil. It is always, you know, difficult to see the transaction. You really have to be a benevolent dictator to try and achieve something like he's achieved. And I'm sure he wouldn't describe himself that way, but I would say that very affectionately about anybody with great vision, courage, self-confidence, a belief in the community, the incredible attributes of a human being to be able to create something like this just cannot be ignored, you know, by me or anybody sort of covering this story, the community. I do enjoy the people I've been meeting in this community, and they're always so very quick to welcome me, but, you know, quite passionately, very quick to tell me how much they revere Jean-Michel for everything he's done for them. So with that, I mean, I would rather just go to Q&A. I'm sure I'm going to have questions about recent changes, future direction, the football program. And, you know, I guess I'd love to hear what you want to know, how I can help you. Just, you know, as you communicate with the public about what's happening at the club.
Bonjour, Monsieur Textor.
Yes, hello, Mr. Textor, Hugo Derek from the Équipe. What are the reasons that pushed the Eagle board of directors to stop collaborating with Jean-Michel Aulas?
Well, I do want to be clear on what is happening. So I think the manner of collaboration has certainly changed, but to say that we've stopped collaborating with him is not how I would phrase it. Jean-Michel believes in what we're doing. He believes in the plans we have for this club and this company. He's chosen to continue in ownership, which, you know, was, I think, very heartening. I'm thrilled that he's going to continue as a significant shareholder. I'm thrilled that he's going to continue on the board of directors. Not only Jean-Michel will sit on the board, he'll continue with 2 seats on the board. He is going to be traveling, you know, to games and being with the team, and he's going to be very present around the club. There are a variety of other kind of details associated with, you know, his separation, but away from the contract, away from the formality of a separation. You know, he's going to be around this club far more than I am. He lives here, I live in Florida, and I think everybody here will continue to welcome for years to come. I expect also, you know, that a level of mentorship will continue because while we all may have strong opinions about which midfielder, striker, defender that we may want, there's a lot more that, you know, goes on in creating a successful football and sporting organization than just picking players. So I hope to be able to continue to rely on him. That's why we are happy to have his board involvement. And so I would just say, to say we're not collaborating, it's probably not accurate. I think it's accurate to say that, you know, we'll take leadership in decisions that once he would have led. But I hope to continue to learn from him about this club and running this organization for many years to come.
Bonjour, Monsieur Textor. Edouard
Yes, hello, Mr. Textor, RMJ, RMC. To a follow-up question, why in so little time has your relationship with Jean-Michel last? You said a year ago our duo is going to last for at least 3 years. Why has this change of leadership occurred so rapidly? Was something broken? What happened?
Well, I think we said that when we came out of the acquisition, I honestly don't remember exactly what we might have said, but the relationship was a 3-year agreement. It had, it wasn't a simple agreement in its structure. There were many decisions related to the organization or the football where he, had the freedom to continue to run the club as he had run in years past. And we in ownership at the board still would have all of the rights that we would have in ownership, as the ownership group would have before. But the agreement had certain thresholds that, if the board wanted to sell an asset, trade a player, go, I don't know, to a level of materiality that we had identified as significant, that the contract actually had various features that allowed the 3 years to be less than 3 years. And also, I think as you've seen in the press, and there are mechanics in the contract that would allow us to modify that contract and take more leadership. But to get to your question, because look, football, it's so easy to have different viewpoints in different directions. And I think my feeling in particular is that we want to invest quite heavily in scouting. We want to increase dramatically the number of traditional scouts we have on the grass, watching games. We want to be extremely efficient with our human resources. The onset of data and computer vision allows us to digest the performance data of thousands of players in a short amount of time, in such a way that you can reduce 10,000 players into 300 and then have a target list which is considerably easier to manage. Pass that through your team into not just data analytics, but video analytics, and make very smart decisions on, how your scouts are used, what games they go see, understanding, who they're going to see before we waste the time and the money to travel. We have a scouting department at OL, with some very smart people. I would say it's a very limited group. You'll have an individual scout responsible for a number of countries, covering a bunch of leagues and a bunch of games. And I just think that there are lessons learned from other great clubs that I've, had the privilege to kind of understand and meet through relationships. And I think in so many ways, OL has some of the highest standards organizationally in terms of football. But I think in scouting, we're probably quite a bit underdeveloped, and it's time to invest more in scouting traditionally and in data. What's happening in computer vision right now, there's a lot of talk about it. Some of the ideas that we have to see that sort of make a material contribution to scouting, might be 2, 3, 4, 5 years away, but the investment has to happen now. And so that's a very different culture. It's the marriage of traditional and innovative techniques. In the near term, we have to get ready for this summer. I said this the other night, the great cliche, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And, insanity is a harsh word for a high quality organization, but the point remains the same. We're not going to get better if we don't do something very different, and now's the time to do something very different. That's probably an answer to your question. I'm not sure I covered it exactly, but I'll take a follow-up.
Zibrick pour le site Olympique
Zibrick, for the Olympique side, will you be appointing a sports director, and whom will you be appointing a general manager? And if yes, who? And how about Laurent Blanc? Will he stay as trainer of the OL team?
We're going to be adding resources to the football department. We have not made any decisions on reducing resources in the football department. We are not going to be adding a general manager, and we are keeping and standing behind Laurent Blanc. I think our coach deserves a ton of resources and our full support going into the summer. And I think if you look at the results of this club, and you know, I know if you look at the results, I'm sure you do. You know, this club has done quite well over the last 15 games. It's probably top of the league in terms of performance. And, you know, we just need to keep adding quality. We need to add veteran experience. I think what we saw happen on the field the other night is a perfect example of what some truly great players that really have the grit and the determination and the know-how to win, what happens when they work with our younger players to just not quit, to refuse to lose. And what happened next, I mean, only the gods can tell us how that happened. But it just, I think the gods will tell you it happened because our players, you know, had the heart, you know, to win. We need more of that in this club. You know, we have, if not the best, one of the best academies in the world. Our team on any given day is full of 7, 8, 9 products of the academy, whether they've rolled up into the team or they've come back to the team. You don't see those kind of numbers, you know, anywhere in the world. And so there's just a lot of good about this team. But the difficulty with young players, and I'm really not speaking as a football guy, and I don't want to, but they don't have the experience that Lacazette has in that moment of time. You know, how to just claw back, fight back, and win games that you just shouldn't. So I really look forward to bringing that grit, that tenacity, that veteran leadership to complement our young people, and then opportunistically, not to just be satisfied with the young people we have, continue to scour the market and make the best football decisions. We're a club with incredible resources. I think you asked somebody to come to this city, this club, this community, everything about it, the town, the restaurants, the food, the river, the trees, then the stadium, the training, the history of the club. I mean, it's got to be one of the easiest recruits in the world of football. But we have to commit to it. We have to have a great summer. We have to take this coach of tremendous experience and vision, and we've got to give him the tools to be successful next year.
I'm listening. How about the sports director? Have you got an idea? Have you moved forward there? The sports manager?
Well, we are discussing quite actively, and you've seen it publicly, restructuring of the men's side and the women's side. We're going to be having conversations from the top of the organization to the bottom of the organization. Sorry, I don't view things as top and bottom as much as that sounds. Making sure that while we may have divided facilities, shared, physical resources, that we do our best to make sure that the people are committed to one versus the other, the absolute and total dedication to the teams in question. We've got to have a lot of conversations about how we support both teams kind of in this new model. And we're going to be adding people, not subtracting people. And I know the focus of the fans and the press has been about individuals, but this decision, to work with Jean-Michel and transition decision-making was not about, individuals. It really was about a direction and a manner of just a vision for football that might be a little different than we've executed in the past. And I'm sorry, I'm not dodging the question, but we haven't made the decisions that the banners would like us to, and we're going to be very patient as we look at resources that we can bring in, and the goal is to add and to strengthen and to be smarter and to use everything from people to technology to make sure we have the best summer transfer window we've had in years, if we should be so fortunate.
Monsieur Textor, on va revenir
Mr. Textor, coming back to Laurent Blanc, in France, when a trainer has the confidence of the president, it's rarely possible. It's a tradition. It means that his days are over. Can you really promise us that he will be there next season? Because in France, when the president says, I trust my coach, it means he doesn't. But you're saying we're going to add and we're going to not remove. How about Bruno Chacrot and Vincent Ponceau, who were the kind of people of Mr. Aulas, if you can put it that way?
Well, I think I just answered the question about Bruno and Vincent. On the coach, you know, I appreciate, you know, the candor. I've noticed the same thing. I think if you want to judge sort of, you know, my words in that same respect, you know, look at Brazil. I think I've been told to fire that coach countless times. We assembled the team in 5 weeks when we bought the club on March 11th of last year and started the season only 5 weeks later. And so I knew I had a good coach, I had a good man, more importantly than anything. And, you know, we see things, same things the fans will see, but often we see a bit more. We see performance data. We see if players are working to, 100% of their, capacity, or 80% or 50%. So when people say, well, it must be the coach, he's not getting the players to play for him, often the data tells us differently. Down in Brazil, I think by the end of the season, suddenly we were considered smart for not bowing to the criticism and terminating the coach. I think by the end of the year, Luis Castro was being, thought of as the next national team coach because he did so well for us after we were told we had to fire him. Then what's funny about Brazil, and I hate to go on, but the analogies, can be made country to country. We had a rocky preseason because we were playing at a tournament that none of our players wanted to play in, and we were looking at their numbers, and they're all at 54 or 65 or 70% of their normal output. And then the calls came, fire the coach again. They're not playing for him. Something's wrong. Well, never would you fire a coach between a successful first season and the beginning of the next season. But nonetheless, those were the calls. And I think here we are. It's early. We're 4-0 down in Brazil. And the apology lines, in queue, waiting to tell Luis Castro how much they love him. And they thank God he's still there. I mean, these things come in waves, and when you have, frankly, a challenge to strengthen your squad, I want to see this coach, coach this next squad we have. When I say I support the coach, I support the coach. I think fans and the press, people are really smart in football. I'm not saying that to patronize anybody. People know this team far better than I do. They know French football far better than I do. My job is to really, really listen to all of that. I think I'm probably one of the most accessible team owners, I don't want to say on the planet, but I listen as much as anybody. But my job is to see through the ups and downs of emotions and understand and think about and evaluate the many, many intelligent arguments you get from different voices, whether they're, the body public that loves this team and watches it every week, or whether it's sporting directors at this club or other clubs with which I'm associated. I just really enjoy digesting the information, and I have to make sound and rational decisions. I don't make them as a single person. I make them, as a result of the collective. But I don't see anything that tells me this coach should be under pressure. And I'm sorry if that's unpopular to certain folks, but I want to add resources to scouting. I want to get deeper resources on the field. I want to give him the experience that he asks for. He's made very specific requests. We did not deliver on those requests during the January window. Nonetheless, he put together one heck of a final part of the season. I'd like to just go on a little bit and address another thing. I mean, we lost some games to some teams that you just don't understand how, right? But, you know, we consider ourselves a top table team playing up from the mid-table, and we expect to win all the games we play against the lower table. You know, football in its cruelty takes a different direction at times, but I do think it's fair for the fans and all of us to challenge the coach to raise that level, like get to a point where we've got the kind of veteran leadership on the team and the kind of strength and tenacity on the team that we just don't drop those games. You know, I mean, you just absolutely have to have a floor below which you cannot go and cannot accept it. And, you know, those moments will come, but if you look at the amount of games we dropped to teams in the lower part of the table, we're the same team that did so well against the upper part of the table. So I think this coach has the knowledge and the experience and the history, if we give him the right resources, to raise the minimum level of performance even on our bad days. And that's worth 12 to 15 points in a table. And that comes with adding just a few pieces in veteran leadership. So when I say I support the coach, I think you just heard why. He's not on my agenda right now for anything other than dinner tonight.
Oui, bonjour, Monsieur Textor.
Yes, hello, Jean-Bernard Gomez from Le Progrès. You talked about adding resources. Many times there will be a window open, a hiring window. There are young players in Lyon that always ask for. How are you going to go about that to improve the team? I mean, how are you going to enable some young players to stay in Lyon? Players like Lukuba, Sharkey, Barkaba?
Well, first of all, I just said I was accessible. It doesn't mean I have the answer. You know, that's a level of detail that certainly I don't want to get in when you talk about specific players. So I'd like to talk about that a little generally as it relates to this club. And, you know, and this is something I'm starting to learn from fans, supporters, and journalists that I talk to. You know, there's something about our younger generation, whether it's in football or in life, you know, social media and media generally, you know, shows how green the grass is on the other side of the fence. And, you know, every young person from Texas wants to move to New York City or Los Angeles. And every player at, you know, Lyon, however incredible this club might be, you know, sees himself at, you know, Manchester City or Chelsea one day. So a lot of that, you know, is fixed with winning, right? If we can get this team back to a level of sustainability and high performance and top of the table performance. But a lot of it's just human nature. You know, the kids in our academy, really, as I said, quite possibly the best academy in the world, they dream of playing for Lyon, but they also dream of playing elsewhere. And I think that before you become a champion for the fans, you need to become a true players club. And what I mean by that is that players, young players, veteran players, have to trust you. They have to share with you their life plan, their dreams. We need to know who they are and what they want. And we know some of them want to develop with us and stay with us and play onto the first team and get the minutes. And, you know, others, you know, for reasons that are perfectly healthy, want to, you know, go to the big city and move on and go elsewhere. you can really honor that, and you can really let players know that you care about them and you understand what they want to do, especially veteran players. What are they trying to achieve in life? How many years do they want to play? Do they want to play here? What do they want to achieve? Like, you know, I think if you're truly a players club and the players trust you, then more players want to play for you. And I think ultimately that's the right way to build an organization. So if you have a young man that comes up through our academy that's just determined to go to other ports in Europe, you've got to be the club to make that possible for that player. So many times administrations or leaders or clubs get blamed for selling players, and so often, as I like to say, water flows where it must. I think so often it's the player that wants to move on. So let's bring this back to Lyon for a moment. It's like, I believe championships are made out of love. I don't think teams with problems, anger, hate, division, teams that are overly commercial, teams that lack soul. I mean, these teams don't win championships. The great champions in every sport, whether it's American football or basketball, when people talk about a championship, they say, oh, that season was magical. What a miracle season. Well, that happens out of love, right? Coaches that care about their players, players that want to play for the coach, players that love their community, fans that love their players. That's what builds championships. So the best way to make sure that young players want to stay with this club is just to keep loving them, supporting them, from the fans to the administration, giving them the opportunity and the career path that they want. And as we watch as parents, our kids grow up and move on and take jobs, it's no different when you're developing kids out of the academy. Some will go, some will stay, some will come back. I think what was really amazing about the other night, the players know this, right? We had a young man make a mistake, cost a goal, and look at the way the veterans just wrapped their arms around him and said, look, it's okay. You're going to be great for us again someday, right? So love and support, love wins championships. And I don't mean to talk about it in such a spiritual way. I'm really just talking about this support system we need. Now, that's on the field, that's in the stands. Obviously, these fans love this team. But everything else, in the company, in the sporting department, the football department needs to work the same way. And I think largely it does here at this club. But when you say, how can you keep the young people? How can you give them opportunities in the roster? This is one of the greatest clubs that I've seen in football for doing that. And I don't want to talk about specific players because that's really not my expertise.
Bonjour, Monsieur Textor. Julien
Yes, hello, Mr. Textor. I work for the Parisien in France. So you were talking about time to do things differently. Time to do things differently. How much time are you giving yourself to enable OL to get back to Champions League? And will that be the goal for the next season? Thank you.
Yeah, I think for this club, it's got to be the goal every season. You could say, well, if I said I have a goal to be better next year, that's, I don't know, that doesn't sound so good at Lyon, does it? This is a club that has all of the resources, the academy, as well, the capital. I think just as Jean-Michel said, going into the beginning of this season, I would say going into the next season, it has to be the goal. You look at this last year and you look at the performance we've had over our last, 14, 15 games, why are we not doing that through the whole season? And it may get to this issue that I pointed out before. You've got to be strong enough to not drop those games we're dropping. You look at, I don't look at the performance data of the teams here. I'm not at that level yet with this club. But across our other teams, motivation is a key thing. I mean, the performance of a player, the output of a player, the kilometers they run, the pace with which they run, you know, it's always better, it's always more intense when they're playing the best of the league. The challenge is getting that team to be just as driven and perform at the same level when they're playing the teams in the bottom of the table. So, I mean, this team, this coach, these athletes, you know, if we can find a way going into the next season to address that kind of above all else, to give ourselves a better, you know, minimum level of performance, that's 12 to 15 points. Now, that's the coach's job. That's not my job. You know, how do you get players to be more motivated when they're playing at the bottom of the table? And the teams at the bottom of the table, these are professionals. They're quite good. I mean, they can beat anybody on any given day. You know, my job is just to increase the scouting resources to make sure that we're seeing and we're evaluating and we're more aggressive out in the market. And while the coach and the team and, you know, they can address their level of performance and commitment game by game, my job is to bring more players. So, in answer to your question, of course, we have to get back to Champions League this year. And if we don't, season's a bit of a failure, isn't it?
Maxime Feuillet pour le
Maxime Feuillet for the magazine Lyon Decider. How will you be acting, how will you be displaying your management style here, or are you going to be directing the club from Miami, or are you going to be more present here?
Well, I'll be chairman for some time. I won't be CEO for long. This club needs a CEO based here, rooted in the history and culture of this country, this region. And honestly, it's one of the best jobs out there. I mean, this is not a difficult place to convince people to come. So please know that it's not my intent to fill the very big shoes of Jean-Michel. I think the shoes of Jean-Michel would have to be filled with several people, but specifically, you know, I'm interim CEO and that's it. And I can't really give you a timetable on when we find the perfect person to assume that role, but we're aggressively starting the search as of yesterday. As far as management style, it's a very well-managed company. It hits very efficiently on many cylinders, not just sports, but entertainment and community. And I think from Miami, I won't do anything because I don't live in Miami. It's like another country if you live in Jupiter. But, you know, I'll be here quite a bit. And whether I'm in Lyon or London or Florida, I mean, certainly I'm capable of helping to guide the football organization to make sure that we have the best possible athletes in the positions of need.
Bonsoir.
Good evening, Florent Grosjean from Newstand Football. The future of for women seems to have been a point that has opposed you to Jean-Michel, which probably explains why he's no longer with him. Can you confirm that information and tell me what are you considering for the OL women in the coming months and years?
That information's from my perspective, wrong. You're certainly welcome to get Jean-Michel's opinion on it, but to be entirely factual, on April 3rd, there was a unanimous vote on the board of directors, including every appointee of Jean-Michel, in favor of the proposed restructuring of the women's program. On April 13th, because there were changes evolving in final documentation, there was another full discussion and unanimous vote on the board of directors. And on our most recent meeting, which was the Friday in question, when we also made decisions on our relationship with Jean-Michel, there was again a unanimous vote, including all appointees of Jean-Michel on the board of directors. So I think it's just really just not accurate to say that that would be the reason, because why then would there have been so much support of it? His team, worked quite actively to get documentation done for the deal with Michel Kang. There's a lot involved because you're talking about shared services, a club that has operated in a certain way for so long across both the men and the women's side, with so many shared services, not only from facilities, but from people and medical. There's a lot of work to be done on this, and everybody on Jean-Michel's team was working very hard, to meet the timelines that Michel needed. And so I just don't think it's accurate that that was the reason. As I say, we were invited to be here. We were invited to be the majority. We purchased shares not only from IDG and Pathé, but also Jean-Michel. We made a large investment because we believe in this club, and the opportunity and the privilege of being at this great club. And I'm not an investor. People call me that all the time. I don't really get that word. That means you wake up every day and you think, well, how can I make $1 worth more than $1? It's not my career. I like to believe that I can help and I can build and I can contribute to great companies. And I'm a lover of football. I spend an enormous amount of time very much on the youth and the academy side, thinking about the development of players, but I truly am a lover of this game, and the privilege of being able to help this team get back to championships is just, an incredible opportunity. So as the majority owner of this club with an obligation to improve next year's result, we wanted to be more directly in control of the outcome. That's why this happened. This is the year that we go into where you're going to be looking at me and you're going to be asking, well, why didn't the season go better? Why didn't you build the squad? Why are we still in 7th place? Like, I don't know what the questions might be a year from now, but I don't want to hear those questions. And so that's why we made this decision now. And we're very happy that Jean-Michel accommodated this. He didn't have to.
Last question.
John, de manière générale,
John, generally speaking, what are you expecting as far as the players are concerned in terms of their attitude? A lot of fans and spectators are complaining about the attitude of certain players. I mean, what are your expectations regarding the players' attitude?
Well, I'll answer the question generally. I don't think anybody was worried about their attitude in the second half the other night. So if we can get that kind of performance all the time. I say that in jest, but I think what fans want more than anything is just heart, determination, unwillingness to quit. It's a bouncing ball with big men flying at you. So, things don't always work out perfectly technically. But yeah, we'd like to see that effort more often. As it relates to individual players, I think we need to continue to add, the thing about adding more strength to the roster is you have to reduce the gap between the starters and the reserves, the first team and the reserves. If you continue to strengthen the base while you're also trying to sort of sign those kind of breakout stars, the people that are going to start, then it gives the coach a lot of opportunity when the output or the effort of a player is not where it should be on a given night that he has no apprehension of making a change. And so building a team means building the base, building the bench, and challenging the starters. And this is a very young team, and so I don't think the coach really has what he needs, you know, to challenge his players, to hold them to a level of accountability, to see the kind of effort you saw the other night happen more repeatedly. So the fans want effort, the fans want heart, the fans don't want to see anybody quit. And as soon as the coach sees it, he needs to jerk them off the field and put somebody on the field who's going to show the kind of work effort that we all want to see. But he doesn't really have that now. He doesn't have the depth and the strength and the tenacity and the veteran leadership and the toughness that he wants. So I guess that's the answer. We all want to see the same level of effort. The coach does too, but we need to give him the pieces to be able to make replacements when necessary and not see the level drop quite as much when you go to reserves.
Oui, bonjour.
Yes, hello.
Flora Chaduc pour
Flora
le
Chaduc
journal
for the
Vous avez
Touillon
dit que vous aviez une
newspaper.
vision
You
peut-être
said
différente
that
de
your
celle
vision
qui
is a
était
bit
faite
different
par le
compared
passé.
to the vision
Qu'est-ce
of
qui
the
est
past
foncièrement
year.
différent de
What
ce
is
que
really
vous
different
imaginez pour l'OM
between what you
dans
are
les
imagining
prochains mois et
for
prochaines
OL
années
in
de
the
ce qui est
coming months and
aujourd'hui?
coming
Et
years
deuxième
compared to
question,
the vision
quelle est
today?
votre
First question. Second
organisation
question, what is
idéale
the
dans un club
ideal
en dehors de
organization
l'organigramme
you
sportif,
see
en
in a
général?
club beyond the sports aspect?
Couple of things. Let's talk about the smallest component, which is the international component. And I say the smallest component because it's only a maximum of 4 spots available for international players. You know, it's a very big world. This part's easy to fix. There are, you know, players from North America, South America, and various parts of the world outside of Europe. And if you have a very big world and you have only 4 spots for internationals, every one of those spots should be taken by somebody that is either a starter or a regular first sub contributor. And when you get to a point where those spots are either unused, as we have now, or players that may not be contributing as much in terms of minutes, starting, coming on a regular basis. You know, I really want to challenge the team to make sure that we have enough of scouting network and recruiting activity and identifying the very best players in the world at the best possible price. I want to acquire player rights in much larger numbers internationally, play those players either into partner clubs at Eagle or other clubs, depending on the circumstances, and literally have dozens of players that are elsewhere in the world that have OL on their contracts and OL in their hearts and are playing and developing as aggressively as they can because they want to earn one of those 4 spots. So I say that's the easy part because it's the smallest part, but honestly, we've got a lot of capital. We've got a big club. We've got an impressive club. We've got the kind of community where people want to live. When players around the world say, I've got to get to Europe, I've got to get to Europe. I mean, this is one of those cities that, you know, is really at the top of, you know, a player's dreams. And so, yeah, I like the idea of using our capital to buy players in other markets between 500,000 and 2.5 million euros. There's incredible talent around the world. You can buy players in certain parts of the world for 2.5 million that would cost you 12 to 15 million in Europe. So I'd like that part of our roster to always be at the very top in quality. In terms of the rest of the squad, I don't really want to point out the differences because I don't really want to get into a tit for tat about what might be in the current plan or the current model. But we want to invest in players that grow with us, that are good investments. If we put too much capital into players that are in the last years of their career, that's no different than increasing the wage level across the squad, and it might be a bit of a sugar high because you get some fancy players next year that everybody thinks, okay, that's the difference. We're going to get to Champions League with these 4 guys. Well, you know, that's not a very good program for the year after or the year after that. So I think we do want to invest heavily in talent, but it's talent that we'll also appreciate. And, well, I'd say probably the other difference is the addition of scouting resources, the manner in which they are assigned to cover teams where they know exactly who they're going to look at before they put in the time and the expense. And that dramatically increases the efficiency by which we evaluate talent. So we don't have just one option for a particular spot on the field. We really have 5 or 6 because as much as you may have identified a player that is perfect for you, they may have already, they may have other plans, their agent has other plans, they've committed elsewhere. You don't always get everybody that you're in love with. So we just have to absolutely be committed to scouting in the pure and traditional sense, and we have to use data to make their lives easier and more efficient, and we have to get the project sold to players around the world. So when OL comes knocking on their door, you know, we don't hear a kid say, as I heard in Brazil recently, he names 5 clubs that he wants to go to in Europe, and we're not one of them, right? So, yeah, I think there's a lot we can do differently.
On va faire des photos pour les photographes sans casque, John. Pour 2 photos.
Pictures.
Is it over? I talked too long?
Ah, je parlais.
Huh?
We take some photo without the headphone and the mic. Just a photo.
Okay. I look at them or I'm talking?
Smile.
I'm not used to posing, so anyway. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I don't know how to do this yet. So, sorry. That's too close. I've got complexion issues.
Ok, merci.
Thank you. Merci.